Tonight, Colorado residents are continuing to recover from what has been described as biblical floods that drenched 17 counties and took the lives of 6 people. About 200 residents are still missing statewide. And one catastrophe modeling firm estimates that damage to residential property will cost $900 million, while damage to commercial and government properties will cost $1 billion. As the water begins to recede, state officials are now turning their attention to the environmental impact of the floods, particularly in counties with oil and gas wells. According to the Colorado Gazette, hard-hit Weld County has the highest number of active oil and gas wells in the state at 20,554, more than a third of the statewide total of 51,228. Yuma County Yuma County to the east has the third highest number of active wells at 3,343. And in breaking news tonight, the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission reports that a damaged oil tank spilled 5,200 gallons of oil into Colorado's Platte River. Joining me now, Colorado resident and Salon.com columnist David Sirota. David, Colorado, based on what I've been reading in your writing about this, wasn't prepared for this at any level, including the governmental.
I think that's a fair statement in the sense of what we're doing regulatorily and what we're not doing regulatorily. When you look at the debates that have been going on in Colorado about where to site fracking wells, where to permit oil drilling, the entire conversation about severe weather events in the era of climate change has not been happening. And I think
they do no worst case scenario modeling, and according to what I've read in your piece, they don't do any even bad case scenario, never mind worst case.
That's right. And I think when you look at a lot of the West has become essentially an energy colony.
Mm-hmm.
The energy industry dictates its orders to the governments in the West, and people forget that Colorado is one of the biggest natural gas reserves in the entire world, not just the United States. And so here you have a situation where you've got $4 billion worth of energy investment, energy fossil fuel development investment on a floodplain in the era of climate change. And now, only months after the Government Accountability Office said that individuals in the government need to be looking at climate change and are not looking at climate change when making permitting decisions, only months after that happened, guess what? We have a climate change intensified flood hitting in the middle of energy country. And now you've got, as you showed, the breaking news of oil spills into major riverways. And here's the thing. This shows that what we're talking about here is not just a situation that affects one city or a couple of counties. The South Platte River, which you just mentioned, that goes all the way out to Nebraska. Mm-hmm. That goes all the way out and filters into the Ogallala water aquifer, which serves much of the middle of the country.
And now, in this kind of flood, with all this oil and gas development and fracking development around, these waterways and these flooded waterways are picking up all of this sludge now, all of this filth, and sending it downriver.
That's exactly right. So we're talking about not just, again, the Denver area, we're talking about an entire region. And here's a critical point. You mentioned a couple of 5,000 gallons of oil. In the context of the Gulf oil spill, that doesn't sound like very much. But in the West, a relatively small amount of oil, by those comparisons, can have a huge impact because it's affecting fresh water, drinking water, in an area that, despite the floods this week, is a typically parched area. So we're talking about an area where the population is growing and where water is a huge issue and where officials in the government aren't properly regulating where these energy situations are being cited. And now you've got climate change coming in with severe weather to create, again, not just an instantaneous or a couple week kind of disaster, but a disaster that if you contaminate the groundwater, creates a question about of everything from drinking water to toxic contaminants on agricultural land.
You wrote about some officials having a cavalier attitude about these possibilities a few weeks ago before this flood. Have they made different noises now?
Well, I think so. I mean, I think you're seeing this, the regulators looking a little bit flat-footed and now saying we're going to be on top of this. Now, the problem is that they didn't learn the lesson early on. They were saying when we were look, there was a debate up in Fort Collins. Should we allow fracking near the Poudre River? And then a flood hits, and guess what? If you site the fracking site too close to the river, you may have contamination. Right. The hope is, and this is my hope as somebody who lives in this region, the hope is that we will learn something from this and better regulate this industry. industry in the future.
David Sirota, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Straight from Colorado.
Yes,
straight
absolutely.
from the site. Thanks, David. Chris Hayes is up next.